Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 5G in Construction webinar. My name is Lindsay Brydson, and I'm an Innovation Manager at Construction Scotland Innovation Centre, and I'll be hosting this webinar for you today. We have a really excellent panel of speakers today. I'm delighted that they could make it. This is an introductory session to 5G in construction, so they're going to talk us through, first of all, some of their role and what the impact of 5G, and also we're lucky enough to have a specific 5G in construction project that we're going to be able to share details with you as well. Our panel today consists of Paul Coffey, who is the CEO of the Scotland 5G Centre. Paul has an extensive background in championing developments in wireless and telecommunications, including establishing the UK's first deployments of 4G in rural communities. So he is well placed to lead the Scotland 5G Centre, who are looking to champion accelerate the adoption and deployment of 5G within Scotland. Our next speakers are Colin Everson, who is Head of Innovation at BAM Nuttall, and Steve Coppins, who is Business Development Manager at Atacor. Now, Colin and Steve are involved in a 5G in construction project, so I won't speak too much about it because I don't want to steal their thunder, but they are part of the delivery team of the 5G AMC Squared project, which with BRE is the third partner in that project. This is a project is one of 9 that recently received funding from the UK government, and it will help test how the country can seize the full benefits of 5G. And it'll see that they'll talk to you more about it, but we'll see them establish 2 5G test sites in Scotland, one in Kilsyth and one up in the Shetland Islands. And finally, we're joined by Paul Dodd, Senior Associate Director at the Scottish Futures Trust. Paul has a background in quantity surveying, and he also leads the Scottish Futures Trust Infrastructure Technology Workstream, and he's going to be speaking to us about the infrastructure requirements for 5G. Just some housekeeping before we start. This session will be recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel. Following on from this, you will all be sent a link to the recording as well. We'd encourage questions. What we're going to, the agenda for today is that Paul, Colin, Steve and Paul will talk a little bit about the project, and then we'll be throwing it open for Q&As. So please use the chat function to send any questions. You don't have to wait till the end. Send them throughout the questions, and we will answer as many as we can at the end. If we can't get through all the questions, then we'll take them offline and respond to you afterwards. We are going to be doing a couple of poll questions as well. The first one will kick off in a couple of seconds. These will appear automatically on your screen, and just click on the button that you think is most relevant to you, and we'll get feedback from them in live time. And finally, your feedback is extremely valuable to us when we're hosting these webinars. So following on from the webinar, you'll be sent a survey asking for your thoughts, and we would really welcome any feedback you can give us on that. Now, we'll go to the first poll question first of all, and Danielle in our marketing team is running the background of this. So Danielle, could we have the first question up, please? And so first poll, fairly easy one, what level of consideration has your business given to 5G? The answers are none, you've held initial discussions, you've included it in your development plans, or you're actively progressing. So if you could pick the answer that is most relevant to your business, we'll leave this open for about 30 seconds or so, and then we'll get the responses. And that just gives us a way to gauge what's happening in the industry just now. Okay, first poll. Okay, so that's actually, that is quite interesting. So you see 45% are none, but 32% are actively progressing. So that's a really, so obviously there we've got more people who are considering 5G at various levels than none whatsoever. So I'm sure our next speaker, Paul Coffey, who is the CEO of the Scotland 5G Centre. Paul, I'm sure that's encouraging news for you. So at this point in time, I'd like to hand over to Paul, who's going to speak about the role of his role in the 5G Centre and how it can support businesses within Scotland.
Super, thanks Lindsay. Let's right, let's get into presentation mode. Swap that over. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, so good morning everyone. Yeah, my name's Paul Coffey, Chief Exec of Scotland 5G Centre. Yeah, some interesting data there. And I guess really that to me underpins, I guess perhaps why I'm here and why the Scotland 5G Centre is here. Really to help raise awareness of what 5G is to all industries and sectors. Really to kind of perhaps remove some of the barriers, remove some of the misconceptions that with 5G it's no longer a reserved right just for mobile operators. So you'll be hearing not necessarily today, but more from me and the centre of that in due course. So yeah, good. So I'm just going to spend the next 10 minutes or so really just covering a little bit about the Scotland 5G Centre, a little bit around 5G and its application in construction. Okay, so yeah, what is 5G? I mean, for me, I've been, dare I say, around this industry for 20 odd years now, and it is a lot more than just a G. So that's the first important thing. I do think 2G, 3G, 4G has largely been a consumer offering, and 5G is whilst you can get it today as a consumer. I spoke to a lot of people that get their latest Samsung S21 and perhaps the partner goes, "What's it do?" And it just goes a little bit faster. And that's not to undermine what 5G is, because I think it's a great technology and a great enabler for good. And that's kind of what we're here to kind of explore a little bit today. And for me as a centre, it's about how we develop that. How we develop that ecosystem, because for me 5G is an ecosystem that isn't just the mobile industry that perhaps deploys the infrastructure, and that's really what we're trying to do with the centre. It's about creating that ecosystem, raising awareness, and pulling a collaboration of partners together to understand how they can use 5G as a technology to really create different outcomes than they perhaps have today to overcome those challenges. So it's about, as it says here, creating and delivering a whole new generation of products and services into the market, utilizing this underlying barrier. So we know it's faster. We know it's up to 100 times faster. We know it's going to deliver more capacity. We know it's going to have reduced latency, and these are the three, I guess, pillars that support 5G as a technology. And we need to bring that to life. What does that mean? What does 10 millisecond latency mean? It's about the tactile internet. How do we do that? But it really enables us in all walks of life to do things differently. And whilst 5G, I guess it's been around probably for 18 months or so now, it's still very nascent in terms of its full capability of where it will go. And certainly the next couple of years it will certainly expand from that. But where 4G is largely about mobile broadband, 5G is about designing and implementation of a connectivity fabric designed, for the next decade. And one of my former colleagues once said, if we do this right, there won't be a 6G. I don't actually think that's true in a way, but I do support the principle of that, because I think it is this connectivity fabric that will evolve. And I don't think we'll perhaps have the same key milestones of 2G, 3G, 4G. It will be more an evolution of building upon this kind of 5G technology. So bringing it back to the centre a little bit. So we commenced operation in October 2019. I joined the business in May last year. And we have three founding partners: University of Strathclyde, University of Glasgow, and Scottish Futures Trust. And we're funded by Scottish Government. So it's about, we are a national centre. Exciting for me. To my knowledge, there's only one national 5G centre, and that's ourselves. So it's about, creating a number of projects, a number of innovation centres that I'll talk about shortly, and really looking at how we amplify that nationally and internationally, looking at the key priority sectors in Scotland, the key challenges in sectors. And for me, it's a truly exciting place to be, with so much happening in this industry, and Open RAN coming along, a lot of shared spectrum becoming available. People are now empowered to deploy their own networks and really tap into this truly fantastic technology that will change how we operate our businesses. So, our mission, to raise awareness, to reap the benefits of enhanced mobility, flexibility, reliability, and security. So that's what we're about. And we want to see Scotland implementing the best 5G practice, because it will ultimately, we talked about bringing this ecosystem together. It's in doing that we will accelerate accelerate the industry to deploy more infrastructure, and that's what it comes down to really. It's about how do we overcome perhaps previous challenges that we've had. How do we utilize that? Utilize new business models, utilize new technology with a view of creating better outcomes. And for me, it's very much looking at that demand and that supply side. So the projects we're leading on, the innovation centres, it's about creating that demand, stimulating that demand, getting people to appreciate that they do need to consider 5G now, and why. What is the so what? Because for me, I think largely that is still missing with a lot of people. It's why do I need to consider 5G? Why can't I use Wi-Fi? Why can't I use 4G? And in some cases, they will be appropriate. And perhaps you need to consider 5G now because, in time, you will need it for capacity reasons or for throughput reasons. And in creating that demand, we can work, and we are working with the industry, the mobile industry, to look at, okay, how do we accelerate infrastructure deployment? How do we remove those barriers? And we've got, one project, InfraLink, is looking at, a barrier busting. So we're doing that now. There's more we can do and more we will, but working with that kind of supply and demand side. So, bringing it back to today's topic, there's no doubt that, the pandemic has raised the importance and dependency that we all have of connectivity and digital infrastructure, and the need to be connected. And I think we've all seen and appreciated that one positive outcome of this situation is it has forced people to accelerate the adoption of digital technology, but there's still so much more we can go. But what's a positive outcome, it has got people on the road to digital transformation. And even with 4G, it's not necessarily all about 5G. Even 4G is having a profound impact on the way we work together from a pure connectivity perspective. So it's about taking that and raising awareness of, okay, what is the difference as we transition to 5G? And you'll hear more about that through the speakers today. So we have seen many industries forced to consider digital connectivity, and we are seeing that being taken up. But if we bring it back to 5G, if we look at ultra reliability, if we look at massive scale communications, so if we look at extreme, so we're looking the three pillars there on the left, it's basically speed, it's latency, and it's capacity. That will get applied in the construction industry to various things that I've met, perhaps whether it's Internet of Things, high definition streaming, remote kind of see what I see, holographic, many things plus this. And that will change how we go about our practices to make them more effective, more productive. And all projects, not necessarily construction, come down to time, cost, and quality. And 5G in this environment, in a construction environment, when you look at those three time, cost, quality factors, can hugely be beneficial to the underlying bottom line for these construction companies. So I think we will see this adopted. I think manufacturing and construction for me are going to be some of the early sectors that take on 5G in mass adoption. So hopefully you'll hear a bit more of that today from our speakers. And just to conclude, I just want to touch on our 5G Connect hubs that we're launching. That program, official launch of that is next month. And this is a hub and spoke kind of model that we're rolling out across Scotland, working with industries and agencies like the Scottish Construction Innovation Centre, looking at how we apply 5G technology to various sectors, and what are the challenges there today, how we overcome those challenges, and what are the outcomes, what are the benefits. So yeah, you hear much more from me on that in the coming weeks and months. But thank you for your time this morning, and I'll hand over to the next speaker.
Great, thank you for that, Paul, and also really encouraging to hear that you think that manufacturing and construction are going to be some of the sectors that benefit. I'm sure that's of great interest to the audience, and certainly something that we champion at CSIC and would encourage. So I'd like to hand over to our next speakers, please. And I'm joined by Colin Everson, who as said is Head of Innovation at BAM Nuttall. And Colin is going to talk to you about the 5G AMC Squared project. We also have Steve from Atacor, who's dealing with the more technical aspects of the project, shall we say. Steve's on hand and on the panel to answer any questions, but Colin will be presenting. So thank you, Colin, if you'd like to start.
Thanks very much. Can you see my screen okay? Is it in presenter mode?
Yeah, I can see it fine, Colin.
Excellent, yeah. So thanks very much for the introduction. Yeah, Colin Everson, Head of Innovation at BAM Nuttall. I'm a chartered civil engineer by profession, so I'm definitely the construction side of this topic rather than the 5G. But we've had a very fast learning curve, shall we say, since we started this project on the 1st of November last year, and late summer when we started to put the consortium and put the application together. So just to provide a little bit of context, where our project sits. So this slide was presented at a conference this week, organised by DCMS, the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, and it sets out the wide variety of different projects that are part of the UK 5G ecosystem and are part of the DCMS supported 5G trials. And as you can see, we've been quite rightly numbered number one in their list of projects. Admittedly, it's probably because we've probably got the one that's furthest north. So we sit in the industrial manufacturing and construction silo of projects, but it's not really a silo because there's a huge emphasis on sharing across different sectors, because certainly no one has got all the answers when it comes to 5G. What we've found out that everyone has got some of the answers, so it's vital to actually connect with different organisations in order to improve our collective knowledge and advance together. So if I can just mention the project team, there's 3 partners in the project consortium, ourselves, BAM Nuttall are lead partners, Building Research Establishment and Atacor. So Building Research Establishment, a well-regarded organisation in the construction industry, providing their research support to the project, and Atacor, a UK 5G SME, and provide the core software and extensive telecoms expertise into the project. We're also supported by a very good supply chain, and we've identified those right back at the application stage before the project was successfully awarded. We've got Accelerant, who are based over in Belgium. SAS provide hardware, they're one of our existing UK suppliers, and we've got InPlayer, who are also a UK-based SME in the telecom sector. So stakeholders, stakeholders really are vital in the successful delivery of our project. We've got a very tight timescale. We kicked off officially on the 1st of November, and the project completion is the 31st of March next year. So that's not a lot of time at all to design, implement, procure, deploy a 5G network, and then actually understand the benefits that the 5G network can provide. So we've got a group of stakeholders that we've identified from back in last summer. We spoke to them when we were putting the application together to give us some advice on how that should look, and they're essential going forward. So we've got organisations such as the Scotland 5G Centre, who have already connected up with lots of people that are working on 5G in Scotland. We're also working with Syria and their Construction Innovation Alliance. So obviously this is going to be a topic that lots of people want to learn about in the construction sector in the coming months and years, and Syria can help us do that. And also not forgetting our construction client SSE. So SSE, we've got a relationship with over many years, building infrastructure for their substations across the whole country. and they've kindly let us use one of their projects on Shetland as a test bed for the project. So also, I'd just like to focus on the fact that it's truly a global collaboration. So although we are a UK-based construction company and our two networks are based in Scotland, we've been reaching out to lots of our existing suppliers that we work with throughout our construction activities, and they've actually connected to global parts of their organisation. So we've spoken to Doosan, who provide construction equipment into our industry. We've spoken to their people in South Korea. We've spoken to Trimble, who provide surveying equipment to construction. We spoke to their people in San Francisco. Multivista, a part of the Hexagon group of companies, and we've had conversations with their people in Canada. And also we've been talking to Nokia recently this week, obviously a huge telecoms company, but they're also making huge efforts into 5G, so we've been tapping into their knowledge and expertise. And also Epiroc. So Epiroc are a company based in Sweden, and they provide drill rigs. So we've got several of their drill rigs operating in Scotland. We've got 3 of the rigs over in Glen Sander, for example. And what we're looking is to see how we can operate some of those rigs remotely using the 5G technology. So why construction? So this is the justification we put in the application. So why should DCMS even consider construction to be a good place to invest time and effort in developing 5G? So what we reflected in the application is the fact that back in 2018, I think it was, the government issued their Construction 2025 strategy, when they're demanding lower costs, faster delivery, lower emissions, and improving exports from the construction sector. So what we've said is that, okay, that we're striving to try and meet some of those rather stretched targets, but what we want to do is explore how the use of 5G in construction can help meet some of those targets. So in particular, what we're looking at is the cheaper and faster aspects of it, and we've made huge gains in improving our digital construction capability over the last few years within BAM. And what we want to do is to build on that and to see how we can push that a bit further. Previously, I guess the first service that you want to install on a construction site is water supply and electricity, but very soon that's starting to be connectivity. So sometimes we can get a permanent fibre optic connection, usually in a more urban site, but often we're having to rely on cellular data coverage. So for example, up in Shetland, at the moment we're running the site of cellular data SIMs. And it's pretty rural part of Shetland, so it's a bit of a patchy coverage there, and as the population on the site increases, that's proven to be a bit of a throttle on the way that we sort of communicate and connect that construction site. So what we're doing is connecting with the fibre optic that runs down the road a couple of kilometres from the site, and then bringing that connectivity up to site, and which that makes all of our systems run a lot more efficiently. So just an overview of what the construction project looks like on Shetland. It's a very large project to provide connectivity from the planned wind farms into the national grid. There's a connector cable and a subsea cable that will connect Shetland with the mainland. It's been delivered by others. But we've got a series of projects within this area, you can see from the aerial shot, at a place called Kirgord in the middle of Shetland. And what we're looking to do is to provide a standalone private network. So this is one of the subtleties that I've learned over the last few months, is that, you know, we hear lots about 5G and it's available in the high street, and you know, it's available to consumer market. But I think the real potential is the industrial uses of 5G. So this private 5G network is an extension of our own IT infrastructure that we're going to deploy on the construction site. We'll have 5 radios on the site which will provide coverage, and the idea is that it will provide connectivity to everyone on the site, no matter where they are. So maybe currently you have to go back to the site office to access all the information. hopefully with a 5G network, you'll have all the information at your fingertips. The other 5G network will be deployed at our presence in Kilsyth in the Central Belt. So we've had a presence as a business there for many years. We've got offices there where we've got people from our Scotland regional office. We've got our rail division based there. We've got BAM Ritchie's from our geotechnical division. But we've also got other facilities. So we've got lab testing facilities from BAM Ritchie's, and we've also got a large plant department that's based there. So we've got plant storage and servicing and such like. So we thought, let's have those two different sites. They're both contrasted in how they sort of function as different parts of the business. But I think if we can provide networks there, you know, we should be able to provide them equally to any of our projects across the UK. So a quick overview of the network, and as I said, it's an extension of our existing IT infrastructure. So we're not reliant on mobile network operators. This is our own infrastructure and our own network that we're designing. On the left-hand side, we've got things like the site worker with their connected handheld device. We've got other solutions that we're looking to connect. That connects through a series of radios on a site. There'll be 3 radios at Kilsyth and 3 radios at Shetland, Kirkgord in ultra-wide coverage. They're connected to what's known as the 5G core that's provided by Atacor, and then that's then connected to our own IT infrastructure and then outside to the internet. And then once we've got all that network up and running, at the moment we've finished the detailed design of the network. We're in procurement stage for procuring all the necessary hardware. Then we're going to go to lab testing, and then we're hoping to actually deploy the network in July this year, and then we can start rolling out these different exemplars. So once the network's up and running, we've got 5 different exemplars that we want to try out. Digital construction workspace is a term that we use to cover the sort of the cloud-based digital construction applications. And again, this is about giving all the information to the people in their hands where they are in the construction site. Connected and autonomous plants, so we've been talking to Epiroc, who provide those drill rigs. They've recently launched last year the facility of operating one of their rigs remotely over the internet, and we are currently pursuing conversations with them to see if we can install that and operate a rig that's located in a different location. We're also speaking to other construction equipment manufacturers as well to see what they're up to. High accuracy asset location and tracking is actually provided with a future release of the 5G software, release 16, but we currently use some mesh network based location systems, so we're looking to try some of those out with providing some 5G connectivity into those to see how they operate. And some of the advanced surveying and data streaming, we've been talking to Trimble, who've got an alliance with Boston Dynamics to have some remote capability of surveying without humans involved. And finally, we've got a computer vision project that's supported by Innovate UK that's been going for 12 months now that we're looking to deploy on the site, again using 5G connectivity to bring that project to life and enable us to deploy it further across several sites. So that's a brief summary of what we're up to. As I said, we're only a few months into the project. We're very much into the design and procurement stage at the moment, but all being well, we should have the networks up and running in the summer this year in July, and then we'll be hoping to share lots of the experience that we gained by deploying some of those exemplars over the following months, with the project coming to an end in March next year. Thanks very much, and we'll obviously be pleased to answer any questions where we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Colin. Thank you for that overview. I find this an absolutely fascinating project. Can't wait to see how it develops. Really looking forward to hearing more from you on this over the coming months. So we'll move on to our next speaker now. I'd like to welcome Paul Dodd, who is from Scottish Futures Trust. Paul's going to touch on the infrastructure aspects of 5G and what SFT is doing to help support. Over to you, Paul.
I'll just set up my screen.
No problem.
Okay, perfect. Can you all see my screen okay?
Yeah, that's coming through fine, Paul.
Perfect. Just get rid of this. Perfect. Okay, so Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Colin and Paul, for the two initial presentations. I suppose to complement them and explore another area of 5G adoption within construction, I thought I would look to explore the information platform, or the role of information in leveraging the full value of 5G technology. So my name's Paul Dodd. I work with Scottish Futures Trust. I work within the construction industry and delivery team. But my role also encompasses heading up the infrastructure technology space within SFT. So our role is to explore the value, the opportunities of technologies and digital working across the asset life cycle, and how we invest, deliver, manage, and how we plan our investments. And our role also encompasses heading up Scottish Government's Building Information Modelling Programme, which we've done since 2015. So I thought with the time we have this morning, just to explore what we are seeing in terms of the role of information and the opportunities linked to 5G technology within construction, and probably worth just starting about some of the trends that we see within the sector, and probably people on this call also witnessing within their day-to-day roles. So fundamentally, the growth of information continues, and through building information modelling, BIM, we are creating really data-rich models for the construction process. But beyond just the models themselves, a big part of the BIM process is the process itself, fundamentally. So it's about being better at how we share information, how we collaborate across multiple stakeholders. I couldn't not recognise some of the similarities with some of the themes that Colin was sharing there about trying to collaborate better in the field, and as well as just digital models and high capacity information that's getting passed. We're also all the new technology that's appearing that's creating, managing, analysing all these data sets as well. So very much a sector that is continuing to evolve, continuing to invest. And if just to kind of begin, kind of shape the narrative for this morning's short presentation, I suppose what we're seeing through time is that there's obviously been a growth within the construction sector in terms of both investment, the technologies we're seeing, the stakeholders and collaboration that we need to deliver against, but also the complexity of our projects. But you could also argue that what's actually increased exponentially is the amount of data that we are collecting and managing as well. And an area that's probably evolved less across that is how we turn our data into information. Importantly, how we actually derive insight and value from that information as well. And it's happening in many exciting ways, and Colin's just given us another good example of that, and coordinating that to drive better outcomes. And I suppose the opportunity exists through 5G technologies to really put us on a new trajectory where we can handle, manage kind of seamless information exchanges with the information that we are collecting within the asset lifecycle. And that is a really exciting space and an area for opportunity and growth. So some of the challenges around information itself and driving that value is the consistent approach to how we transfer information. And this is a kind of recent example. Basically, the recently published Construction Innovation Hub defining the need looked at the £35 billion estate, and within that there was 104 different names for a toilet space. So there is a need to drive machine readable information that can be consistent, proportionate, and used across multiple stakeholders. So the opportunity exists to continue that drive to improve how we manage and realise value from information. But some of the barriers that the industry sees is managing large data sets, interoperability, and the investment and skills that go around that. And does, I think, 5G have an opportunity and a purpose in supporting that, some of those challenges. So, like I said, the role of information, that kind of ecosystem of stakeholders seamlessly exchanging information is key. Excuse me, and the standards that surround this is building information modelling, which industries has been continuing to evolve and move to, and we're seeing lots of value and benefits in that, but also challenges in how that information is exchanged. But that continues, and there's lots of opportunities that sit within that. And as I mentioned earlier, our role has been supporting the public sector in Scotland, and we've been on a journey since 2015, supporting public sector in the implementation of BIM and working with the Innovation Centre, supporting industry, and also supporting the delivery of procurement policy and guidance to better equip, better support both industry and the public sector and how they manage information within the construction sector. And the space has gained significant momentum, and we always see these new areas of innovation around different technologies, and that work continues. And I suppose the big ambition is when we create world-class public buildings, we do that with a world-class information that sits around that to derive that value. And the way construction is delivered and design and facilities management, this need for collaborating remotely, collaborating in field will continue. And Colin's example of not going back to a source for information, having it in field on your person or on your hand on a tablet device is key to that as well. So getting access to the right information at the right moment, and 5G's role in that. Just to close with the time we have, I thought I would just touch on areas that we're seeing potential further use cases for 5G, specifically in relation to construction and some of the digital transformation that is occurring that will further drive this agenda within the construction sector. And as people be aware, there's this continuing trend and reports and programs of activities driving digital transformation within the construction sector, and that continues to this day, which is really exciting. More recently, though, just things to highlight was the recently published construction recovery plan by the Scottish Construction Leadership Forum, and that was in response for the sector to COVID, and one of the areas in there is about supporting a more productive and sustainable industry, and an area or work stream group within that is looking at a data and digital strategy for the sector currently. So that work's ongoing, and supporting the sector and SMEs. Another area is planning. So Scottish Government's digital planning team have published their programme. Fundamental to that is digital and embracing new digital technologies. And one of the areas is around disseminating high quality visualizations. Is there a role there? Creating kind of high quality, high fidelity visuals, both to stakeholders but also communities as well. So that's something to be aware of. Other areas that are kind of driving this digital change, building standards have their futures board. So they're exploring with new technologies, new innovations around supporting the verification process. So there's really some exciting work happening there as well. And then the last two areas which probably will continue to drive this change within construction and leaves an opportunity for the potential of 5G is really the move towards open standards to support, again, that collaboration amongst stakeholders within projects, and that both kind of model view filing or IFC filing, different open formats that will support that collaboration of information. And then the last, but by certainly not least, is just the innovation itself, the use cases appearing on the project you just heard from, the work of the 5G Centre and supporting industry and businesses try and identify the value of 5G within the sector, which is really exciting. And just to leave you with a kind of potential or opportunity, so 5G enabling a seamless high value information exchanges to support collaboration, decisions and outcomes in how we design, construct and operate our assets, and we're keen to support that going forward with partners here and on the webinar today. And I'll pass back to Lindsay. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Paul. It's really interesting. First of all, 104 names for toilet spaces just sounds, it really encapsulates some of the issues there around data, doesn't it? But also, I really liked your phrase, getting the right info at the right moment. I think that's something that it's such a simple way of putting it, but it is something that it is vital to help the industry develop going forward. So thank you for that really interesting presentation.
No problem.
Right, everyone. Just to say, we will shortly be moving on to the Q&A session. We've had some questions coming through already, so thank you for that. If you want to ask the panel any questions, then please use the chat function and get them in. But now we will go to another poll, please. Danielle, could you bring up the next poll? Thank you. And this is just for everyone on the call. Just we would like to know, what support would you like to see made available to help your business embrace 5G? Is that in the form of financial, expert advice, skills development, or real life case studies? If you could select the one that's most relevant for you, and we'll see the answers for that in a few seconds. Thanks. So quite a mix there. Skills development and case studies are showing the highest one there. That's interesting. Certainly the Colin and Steve's project will certainly help with the case studies aspect of that. Okay, great. Well, we'll move on to the Q&A session. So if I could ask all the panelists to get their cameras on, please, that would be great. And we'll move on to the first question. First question, this is from Roddy, who is based in the Highlands and Islands, and in not many areas, not even just really rural areas, you can't even get a 3G signal. Can you get a local 5G booster connected to the fixed line network in the same way you can get a Wi-Fi extender in your house? Now, I know the panelists, this is one of the earlier questions came in, some panelists have had some chat about this already. So Paul Coffey, could I bring you in first of all for your thoughts, and then Steve, I'll come to you on that.
Yeah, sure. No, thanks. So I guess it comes down to what the use case is, or the end user. Is it from a consumer perspective or a business? But yeah, there are boosters available. I'm not sure if they're available for 5G yet, but certainly 3G, 4G, there are boosters available. That's targeted at a kind of domestic or perhaps a small business type entity. And that just kind of repeats the signal indoors in a way. Equally, you can get professionally installed external antennas that are pretty effective these days. You'll get perhaps 20 dB, up to 20 dB gain from the external signal outside, and then you can bring that into the house and distribute through a fixed wireless access solution or a wireless router, and then connect to that over Wi-Fi. So there are solutions out there. But equally, I guess what we're more talking about here is perhaps 5G private networks. And there was a move by Ofcom 18 months or so ago now, where we can, I guess prior to that, spectrum was the reserved right for largely the mobile industry and mobile operators. But now you can access what's called local license or shared license. So that really basically enables individual businesses to deploy their own private network, which is what, in the context of construction, it really, enables you to get that data, analyze that data in real time, and turn, to Paul's point, data into insight and information. So that's, truly exciting. And I think from the 5G sensors perspective, that's really what we're going to be helping with going forward, is around identifying those use cases, identifying how people can go about it, and informing people and sharing that knowledge. Great,
thank you, Paul. Steve, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate really what Paul was saying, that the big change that's occurred in the UK over the last 18 months has been the availability of shared spectrum. So historically, if you were a business, if you had some specific sort of industrial application, and it was going to have a dependency on 5G, you would be very much dependent upon the mobile network operators to be providing coverage for you. With shared spectrum, you now have the capability to create private networks yourself, which are completely independent of mobile network operators. And that means you can go ahead and deploy your 5G applications in your own timescales in a manner that suits you. And this is what we've actually done. So we in our project we have applied for spectrum licenses from Ofcom, and we are now owners of 5G capable spectrum at 2 locations in Scotland. So basically it's in a similar manner to the mobile network operators. We can only operate these networks on a very localized basis, but these are 5G capable networks. It's 5G capable spectrum. We can do it ourselves using private networks in these locations. So we're not dependent upon the mobile network operators to provide coverage.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. And just something based on our previous conversations from that, I mean, I appreciate your project is different because it's a pilot, but if you had one of those, your private 5G network, it doesn't necessarily have to be just specific to one company, does it? Other companies would be able to use it as long as they were in that area. Is that correct?
So 5G supports some very, very interesting capabilities, including a capability called network slicing. And what network slicing allows you to do is to offer parts of the network to other organizations. So in theory, once we have got our network up and running and we understand how much of the network resource we require for our own purposes, we could make other parts of the network or other proportions of the resource available to third parties for third-party usage. So it is something that you can do, yeah. And you know, there may be enterprises around that we might be able to target that could benefit from that. That's kind of a step 2. So we need to get step 1 out the way and deliver on our project first, though.
All right, great. Thank you, Paul and Steve, for that. We'll move on to the next question now. It's a question from Rob. A question to Paul. Do you see the 5G supply chain investing enough for the early adopters of 5G? I'm not sure, he's not specified whether Paul Coffey or Paul Dodd answer for that one. Would either of you like to come in on that?
I'll bow to the other Paul for that question.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I guess it depends what you mean by supply chain. I guess we did touch on that a little bit in the last question. You know, I think if we look at Scotland, for example, what we're seeing 5G deployment in towns and urban areas predominantly at the moment. It will roll out from that. And 700 spectrum was successfully awarded to all the mobile operators a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to see 5G begin to get rolled out using that lower band frequency, which basically means coverage will go further with 5G, and so it'll be more cost effective ultimately for the mobile operators. So it will come in time, and as we know, but it will take time. And I think we need to be cognizant of, the business model has perhaps been challenging in rural, low population areas for mobile operators for the last 20 years, and that isn't going to change. So we do need to look at understand that and sort of thing. Steve and Colin are doing here about putting private networks in, is we're going to see more of that for business use application, but also for more rural application as well. And one project we're looking at is looking at leading with the health use case as an example to support the implementation of a 5G network in a rural community, and then layering on other use cases on top of that, as opposed to maybe a mobile industry look at it largely historically from a consumer angle and a population density. We're turning that on its head and looking at it from a use case perspective and how that drives the business case. So the supply chain, it will come, the infrastructure will come, it will take time, but and just on the private network piece as well, is technology is evolving and evolving very fast, and what we will see in the medium term is some of these private networks could be wholesale. That network could be utilised to wholesale a service back to mobile operators. So it could be a revenue stream for some of these private networks. If perhaps you could offer a network slice and sell that onto as a service to EE, Vodafone, whoever. So we will see those start to come in future years.
Okay, great, thank you, Paul. Next, move on to the next question. This question from Mohammed. What specific data-driven applications that will be used for 5G in your project, given the substantial infrastructure investment? What about return on investment? Now that sounds like it's specific to the 5G AMC squared. So Colin and Steve, I'll maybe bring you in on that, and then Paul Dodd, perhaps we could talk about applications and potential applications in a more general sense. So Colin.
The application. So I guess there's two aspects here. Is one about exploiting the things that we do now and seeing what additional benefit it brings. So as I said, we've already adopted a digital approach to the way we deliver infrastructure. So what we're looking at doing is how does 5G make that better? So for example, can we provide all the digital construction information to the site user in the field is the same way as they're sat in the project office? So no longer do they have to keep going back to the project office, fire up their large bin spec laptops or computers. By having a lot of this stuff hosted in the cloud and the availability of 5G connected devices, they can have a tablet or a smartphone and have that same experience as access to the information, because there's no point in having all your BIM models in the world if you can't actually get it into the hands of the people that need it. So that's one aspect. And the other one is about, can we actually introduce new technology using 5G that we don't do now? So for example, we see the robotic dog there with a scanner on the top of its back. I mean, this is not something that's in adoption in anywhere near in the industry yet. So it's about trying these new things. So okay, although it doesn't need a human, it can also go in hazardous environments. It can go out at night. It can go lone working. So these are the kind of new applications that we're looking to explore. In terms of return on investment, I guess, well, it's always going to be expensive the first time you do it. We're very much learning of how to put these networks together. The price that people paid for the first Apple smartphone, and now we give them out to our children because the price has tumbled and the technology is readily available. So yeah, okay, it is expensive and time consuming the first time round, but that's only going to get quicker and cheaper and faster the more we do it.
Great, thank you, Colin. Paul Dodd, any thoughts on that from a wider perspective of adoption in data and about return on investment?
Well, yeah, I think we've through our work we actually created a return on investment tool, primarily around the investment on better systems for managing information, so BIM and wider. So there is work there that can be built on this new capability of that greater coverage, that latency, that it'll only just enhance that ROI. We are working with authorities, public bodies with large geographies, and we've already been looking at the return investment of having the right information to avoid double trips, 3 trips, resolving building failures quicker. It just grows as an ROI in terms of trying to solve a maintenance event or a building failure quicker. So yeah, there's work that can be built on, and yeah, it needs to be looked at in the round, and there is obviously that parallel dynamic, which is the cost of the technology as well. So but yeah, there's an understanding there of the value, which I think is important.
Okay, great, thank you, Paul. Another question.
Can I say that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I mean, it's how we look at it as well. You perhaps need to move on from looking at it as a capital cost, and it's about the productivity. We've been speaking with the Worcester Bosch 5G guys down there, and they've been leading with a project for I guess probably 18 months or so now. And I think they quote me on these numbers, but I think they put in a number of sensors running over 5G, and as a result, they had I think it was 1 or 2% productivity gains in their manufacturing plants, which I think equated to like an 18-month return on investment for them. So it's about looking at the data and the outcomes and what value that brings to business rather than looking at it as a pure capital cost.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Move on to a question from David now in a different area. Are there any training or skills development programs running alongside the new 5G tech? Paul Coffey, can I bring you in on that one?
Yeah, so I think I touched on in my presentation. So we're launching the first of our 5G innovation hubs in May, and with that we're going to be running a series of awareness campaigns, and that will start with effectively what is 5G, and then we'll basically layer it down to how that is applicable in various sectors and industries. And we're also looking at the moment about doing some more, I guess, recognised training around 5G for managers and stuff like that within businesses. So that's something we're investigating at the moment. But certainly awareness training is a big part of what we'll be doing, and you'll see more from us in the coming weeks.
Great, so keep an eye on your website, which we will be sharing links to all panelists at the end of this. Right, conscious we're getting towards the end, but a couple more questions, so we'll try and get through as many as we can. This is a question from Jan Mark. Could you please elaborate more on the use cases for using 5G for holographic building visualization? Paul, Dodd, is this something that you would like to come in, or any of the other panel?
Yeah, I can start with it anyway. So yeah, so you've got your augmented or your virtual, so in field augmented reality to see what's to come in field is one example. We are seeing that both in terms of there's numerous use cases in terms of, and Colin will touch on this probably more, but just being able to see in field the progression of construction on site by overlaying visuals. Excuse me. You've also got this evolving planning piece where communities could end up having that opportunity. And then there's obviously the virtual, which is whichever hardware you use, goggles, domes, caves, whatever it may be. So again, that's continues to evolve, and its application grows in terms of supporting that collaboration. So there are a number of use cases out there. I don't know, Colin, if you've got any other specific examples.
Yeah, so like you say, I mean, visualization comes in all shapes and sizes. I mean, previously as engineers, we used to show lay people cross sections and elevations and expect them to understand these 3D buildings and infrastructure that we're providing. So like you say, those visualization tools are essential. Anything from the sort of the immersive dome that we have, I think it was at Inverness Station, to show people of what the forthcoming construction looks like. But yeah, more specifically, the holographic is, I guess that's using devices such as Microsoft HoloLens. So where the wearer can put on the device and then project it in front. They can see through the device, so it's a transparent display, but they can see the object or the asset, what it's going to look like in the future. So it's very much an individual experience, but what it does is provide a very real visualization of how the project is going to advance over the coming months. And what we're looking at doing is by connecting that to the 5G network, you just get a better quality of image. So you can have multi-users wearing different devices, and you can have a more realistic image, if you like, projected onto the device with 5G. So it's early days, but that's certainly one of the exemplars we're looking to deploy.
Great, thank you, Colin. And conscious that we are running out of time, but one last question. I'd like to put this to Steve, and this is from Mike. In terms of the 5G private network deployment, is the number of parties involved a potential barrier to small businesses taking forward private networks, or are you finding off-the-shelf projects and products readily and easily available? Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we need to remember that the project that we're involved in it's a leading edge exemplar, so it's a government sponsored project. The way that the private network ecosystem will evolve is going to make this sort of thing much, much easier in the future. In particular, I think we're going to find that systems integrators are going to be picking up on this sort of thing, and they will become a one-stop shop for these sort of networks. So is this stuff off the shelf at the moment? In reality, no, it's not. What's it going to look like in a year's time? It's going to be significantly easier than this. I think if we stripped away all of the process related stuff that has delayed us, in a normal project, you'd be taking this down to a matter of weeks. So you wouldn't have to deal with the reporting with DCMS. You wouldn't have to wait as long for the radios. You wouldn't have to wait for the software to be developed because it's all going to be there. So take all these things away and you're suddenly ending up with something which has significantly shorter timescales and is much easier to deliver. So I think in the future, private networks will be supported by an ecosystem. They will be systems integrators, and they're going to be much easier for people that want to replicate the sort of things that we're doing.
Great, thank you, Steve. And I'm conscious that we are out of time, but I think that is a really positive note for the future to end on. I would say with all of our speakers today, watch this space. Clearly, we put some links into the chat for relevant information, but clearly this is an area that will be developing in the future. So I would like to say thank you to everyone in the audience for all the questions. That was a great session, and thank you to Paul, Colin, Steve and Paul for their participation today. Just a few follow-up points for housekeeping. We will be posting details for the links that they're already in, so you should have those already. Again, I mentioned the feedback earlier on, so you will get, once you exit this, you will get a survey. We would welcome your thoughts on that to help us improve for future. Future events for CSIC, our next event is on the 31st of March, which is Passive House in Practice, and that is looking at providing free training to building to passive house standards. If that's something you're interested in, then please sign up for that. The links are in our website. And just, I would like to thank you for attending today, and thank you again to all our panelists, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you.